The UAW just announced that they are now officially organizing against Tesla. We also have a Cybertruck range leak, pretty much, but first let's start with the government wanting to give Tesla lots of money. The Biden administration is discussing granting automakers a temporary reprieve from new rules poised to limit a consumer tax credit for EVs that contain certain materials from foreign adversaries. You know how the Model 3 is supposed to lose its tax credit, half of it, in 2024? Well, if this is actually going to happen, that will no longer be applicable to the Model 3. So a temporary reprieve would have huge positive implications for EV makers, especially Tesla. We don't know for sure if the full tax credit is going to stay for the Model 3 in the US going forward, but the chances after today have certainly increased by a lot. In the meantime, nearly 4,000 dealerships in the US urged Biden to slow down their EV push because they are worried about too many EVs on the roads. And of course, they are not really selling EVs, and they don't really want to because they will not make much money from service because EVs don't really need to be serviced. Charlie Munger, who just passed away, would call a system like that built on perverse incentives because the automaker wants to transition to EVs and wants to sell EVs, but the dealers do not want that. Before, when they just sold gas-powered vehicles, the incentives sort of aligned. The automaker wanted to sell as many cars as possible, and the dealerships also wanted to sell as many cars as possible because that meant they would make a lot more money from servicing these sold vehicles. Tesla, in the meantime, does not face this conundrum because Tesla basically owns all of its service centers. Tesla just wants to maximize user experience, make sure it is good so that all these people come back to Tesla, which they do. And Tesla by far has the best loyalty. Tesla's structure inherently makes it more cohesive and cooperative, while a lot of these competitors basically are made up of multiple smaller companies within this huge structure that compete with each other, which eventually leads to a user experience that's a lot worse. And many of these legacy automakers are not even really trying to change their model. Some, though, are. A big shout out to BMW here. But GM, Ford, not really. These companies will be solely responsible for their own demise because we know what works, and yet they are not even trying to really do that. And that's, of course, a huge opportunity for us Tesla stock investors. With all of this happening, Dan Ives has just reiterated and outperformed Tesla stock rating with a $310 price target on Tesla ahead of this historical Cybertruck launch event. Many OEM EV competitors globally are still on the treadmill stuck in neutral. Dan Ives expects the dual motor and the tri-motor of the Cybertruck to be in between $60,000 to $80,000, which would make the Cybertruck be eligible for the full $7,500 EV tax credit in the US. So Dan basically just took the original Cybertruck pricing and adjusted for inflation, and that's probably how he came up with his current predictions. And while Dan Ives is convinced that this is going to be a historical moment for Tesla, Philippe, an analyst from Jefferies, is convinced that canceling the Cybertruck would be a positive thing for Tesla.
Quick take on the charts, Carter.
Yeah, well, Tesla kind of goes in the pair of twos category as well.
Really?
It's the same level it was essentially 3 years ago. A lot of volatility, but it's not really progressing. And then as to that truck, I think it's cool until one day you walk into your garage, you go, my God, that thing's ugly. And you never drive it again.
You know, this begs this question. How come they're not showing the lines? Lines of people that want to see the Cybertruck. I mean, these people cannot even drive the Cybertruck yet, and they came anyway. Why do you think CNBC is not showing the lines here? Why not show the lines? The crowds. I am a student of history, and history has proved time and time again that it does not pay to bet against Tesla and Elon. Tesla has this way of eventually quieting the naysayers. The Cybertruck event is actually tomorrow. Now, James will be happy with a range that starts with a 4 for the dual motor, but he wouldn't be too surprised if it is in the high 300s. At reveal, they simply said 300 plus. Troy, though, has some fairly bearish predictions here. Not many people are happy about what Troy is saying here. He has two scenarios that he calculated. One gives us an EPA rated range of 293 miles and the other 268 miles. He used this computer model to find out what the drag coefficient number is, and that number is 0.44 based on a simulation done 2 days ago, based on the dimensions and everything that we know about the Cybertruck. But James is very strongly convinced that there's zero chance they list this thing for below 300 miles. Yeah, if it's below 300 miles, then you can't really tow anything, you can't really carry anything super heavy in the Cybertruck. It's basically more of a city work truck then, or just a lifestyle pickup truck. But if there's another version that does give you the range that you actually need for towing and all of the heavy work, then I think it's okay. Troy's calculation though relies on the Cybertruck battery being 123 kilowatt hours, which is a funny number. 123. That does seem a little bit like someone's playing here. Here's where the rumor originated from.
He works for Tesla, and he was actually the one who got to drive it just a couple of miles to that showroom. And he may have told me some things I'm not sure he was allowed or supposed to tell me. I'm not under a contract, though. I didn't sign any documents, so I'm going to tell you. Obviously, everybody wants to know the range and the price, which I knew he wasn't going to provide anyway. So I asked Josh what the energy consumption was like. Did he know the typical watt hours per mile of a truck that big? And he said, while he wasn't sure of the watt hours per mile and that Tesla actually locks out a lot of information from the software on the Cybertruck, he told me, okay, I'm not saying this is fact, but I'm just relaying what he told me, that the battery pack in this Cybertruck was 123 kilowatt hours. I was very surprised that he was that specific with the number that he gave to me, because honestly, that's quite a bit lower than most of the competition. It's smaller than the large battery in the F-150 Lightning. It's smaller than the large pack in the Rivian. And while he couldn't provide range estimates for me, I think with the Cybertruck's higher voltage architecture and probably fairly aerodynamic design, they could probably get still north of 300 miles of range with a 123 kilowatt hour battery pack, which could make this the most efficient pickup truck of all time. He also clarified to me that the mirror inside the Cybertruck is not a display and it does not convert into a display, so that it's basically useless if the vault cover is closed. He told him that Tesla would not even tell him if it was a dual motor or a tri-motor, but thanks to people zooming in on the VIN on this particular Cybertruck, we're pretty confident this is a dual motor, which makes sense, lines up with the 300-mile range.
To me personally, it would be slightly disappointing to see a Cybertruck under 300 miles of range. But if the tri-motor Cybertruck does have a very good range and the price is pretty good, then I wouldn't really be all that disappointed. If you now go to Cybertruck page on Tesla's website, you will see a countdown. So it is actually happening tomorrow, so soon. Really looking forward to it. We are about to make history tomorrow. About the rear view mirror problem, because if you have the bed cover closed, you can't really use your rear view mirror, but you're probably going to be able to use the backup camera. So maybe for the Cybertruck, Tesla will have some sort of a setting where by default, you can always see what's behind you using that backup camera. Just now, there was a small Cybertruck leak. We found out that instead of the Cybertruck having, for example, a plaid mode or a ludicrous mode, it will probably just have a beast mode. There also should be a solar option setting, but that could just be an accessory that may not come standard with any Cybertruck. The beast mode came with this visual from Tesla. And the Cybertruck will have many accessories. For example, it will have base camp, possibly a Cybertruck solar cover, a light bar, and probably quite a bit more. These are the two wheel options that will be available probably. The one on the right is, I assume, a standard option, and the one on the left is a more premium option. Marcus Brownlee, who runs a massive YouTube channel, just posted this picture. He clearly has access to the Cybertruck, and I expect a video from him tomorrow with all of the details. Now, one thing looking at this picture that stands out to me is, if I'm looking straight ahead, this sort of gets in the way. Now, this could be just because of the camera lens. it could be a bit distorted. Maybe when you are actually in the car, it feels quite a bit different. But looking at this, it seems a bit weird to me. However, when I first heard about the Model 3 screen being in the center and you had to look at the speed by looking to the right, I thought that was also a bit unusual and weird, but then I got in the car and it actually was really great. So I'm not making any conclusions here. Now, there's one more interesting detail here. By zooming in, we can actually see the range, and it says 265 miles of range. The battery does not seem full, but it is not clear how much it is charged. And also remember that range is probably not EPA. EPA is probably going to be higher than whatever range is displayed on Tesla's screen. And the EPA range is the only range that actually matters when comparing the ranges between different trucks. If I look at this range, clearly there's one bar that is not full. It is not perfectly clear to me that there shouldn't be another bar here. The screen is just slightly distorted, but there's definitely at least one bar missing here. And I counted 9 bars here. So if you count this one missing one, it's 10 bars, which makes sense. Then that would mean the total range is just slightly under 300 miles. As I'm recording, Troy made a few more posts, and now his latest prediction is that the Cybertruck, the dual motor Cybertruck, will have 291 miles of EPA rated range. But we will find out tomorrow. I do want that number to be over 300 miles though. Electric has a new article about the Cybertruck. Should we be concerned about the build quality? So Electric went to a New York City Tesla store, and it appears to me that they took a very close look at it. Overall, it seems that they are praising the Cybertruck. They said that the panel gaps are pretty sharp here, and they're not complaining about anything here. But they did say that not even this display unit is perfect. For example, there's an issue here. See if you can spot it. At first, when I was just casually looking at it, I was wondering, where's the problem? It said there's a problem with the bumper, but where exactly is the problem? Can you see it? Try spotting it right now, and then I'll tell you where it is. See if you can actually find it. They are talking about the panel gap on the front bumper that is way bigger at the top rather than at the bottom. I think they are talking about this part here. So if you really zoom in, yeah, you can see it's slightly not perfectly perfect, but I didn't notice it at first. I had to carefully look and then zoom in, and then I was like, oh, okay, I think they are talking about this. If that's all they have, I think it's pretty good. There's an update about the Sweden situation. If Tesla shows it's possible to operate in Sweden without a collective agreement, then other companies could be tempted to do the same. This is the head of the union that's striking against Tesla. Well, you should have known better before picking a fight with Tesla. Clearly, Tesla does not want a union, and Sweden is a pretty small market, so why did you pick this fight that you know you are actually very likely to lose? Everything was fine before you picked this fight. You did not even have a lot of Tesla employees striking against Tesla. Only about 10% of Tesla employees initially chose to strike against Tesla. So no. You cannot just say that this is your main reason for continuing the strike. It's like the bully that gets offended when he gets bullied back. You picked the wrong fight here. I wouldn't say much if Tesla employees actually wanted to unionize, but this is very different. Tesla just changed loyalty benefits offered in North America. Instead of giving you free months of FSD capability, it now gives you 10,000 credits, which I think that's better, because if I am already buying FSD and you're giving me 3 months of free FSD, that doesn't make much sense, does it? We know that Tesla is still exporting a lot of refresh Model 3s, and the first Refresh Model 3 deliveries in Malaysia are about to start today, actually. GM said its new labor deals after a lengthy US strike will cost it $9.3 billion, even as it outlined $10 billion in share buybacks, a 33% dividend increase, and substantially lower spending at its robotaxi unit crews. So they are giving more money back to shareholders and they are not investing in crews. Neither do they seem to be investing a lot of money in EVs, which means they are not really optimistic about future growth. They know themselves now, oh yeah, we reached the peak. We should just give all the money back to the shareholders, or they have a backroom deal with the government because they are so unafraid of spending so much money. I mean, a 33% dividend increase, that sounds like a lot. Usually if you observe Tesla stock, it goes up before big events, and then on the actual event day, the stock often, not always, but often actually goes down. I would expect something similar tomorrow, so if the stock actually goes up tomorrow, I will be very pleasantly surprised. And while everyone is so focused on the Cybertruck, I am actually really focused on Tesla's energy business in the long term. Tesla currently in the whole world is number 3 in terms of how many projects have been installed as of July 2023. And of course, overall in the whole world, a lot more people are buying EVs, but just in China, battery storage systems grew about 400% in 2022. There's so much potential in the Tesla's energy business. So despite what happens tomorrow, keep that in mind. And remember, the new Megapack factory is coming online next year in China. And in China, if the factory scales just as quickly and as fast as Tesla's Gigafactory did, then we should expect a crazy 2024 for Tesla's energy business. As I'm recording this, GM stock is up today almost 10%. That's because of fairly sizable buybacks and increased dividends. But how come they are not pursuing EVs? How come they are not announcing bigger investments, more aggressive investments? Maybe that's because they just simply figured out they cannot really make very good EVs. And let's face it, if you are a GM stock investor, you're probably not all that concerned about the very, very long term. You're just thinking about how can we get as much money out of this thing. If Tesla did anything like this without making it super clear that they are investing as much money as they possibly can into the future, I would freak out, because it would indicate to me that Tesla is no longer focused on the very long term and the focus has shifted to the short term now. Cruise lost $1.9 billion in the first 9 months of the year and had $1.5 billion of cash at the end of September. Its current reserves will last until the middle of next year if it receives no additional funding, which is quite likely, or GM just sells it to someone else. Alex put together a beautiful screenshot here. Just about a year and a half ago, Volkswagen said that they could sell more electric cars than Tesla by 2024. And now Volkswagen says its core Volkswagen brand is no longer competitive financially. I wonder how long it will take for us to start hearing similar things from GM. It's already happening, but will they admit to this reality? Remember this clay pickup truck from Lucid? Lucid has now confirmed that the clay prototype was real, but that they are not actually working on a pickup truck.
I guess the idea is that technologically, from an engineering perspective, from a battery perspective, this is a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people have focused on the Cybertruck and the steel, which is its own challenge, but Musk has warned repeatedly that this truck has a lot of bells and whistles. There's a lot of new technology in it. So it's going to be difficult to manufacture in high volumes for that reason. And he's, very clearly stated on the last earnings call that they're not going to reach high volume for quite a while.
Bells and whistles was exactly what they did with the X, and well, that didn't go so well from a sales perspective. So I'm interested why he's going back for more in this way. Why do this?
Yeah, I mean, that's what really struck me as I listened to him talk about the Cybertruck. He kept saying these phrases, and I was like, oh my God, this sounds like the Model X all over again, which, they eventually lamented and sort of acknowledged that the Model X suffered from hubris. And I just sort of fear that we're about to see this all over again. I mean, it's new battery architecture. It is, rear wheel steering. It's a new steering wheel. It's the steel.
Right.
It's a sound system. I mean, and we don't even really have real specs yet. So I think that there's probably a lot of great surprises that will delight consumers when they do the big reveal on Thursday. But manufacturing in high volume, it's just going to be rocky. And Tesla itself has basically said this.
I think there is one important difference between the Model X and the Cybertruck, and that is the Model X, some of the features were added almost just for the sake of adding more better features. Not quite exactly, but for example, the Falcon Wing doors. In theory, it would be great if the doors opened perfectly every single time, then you can get into the vehicle a little bit easier. But in reality, my friend has a Model X and he has a scratch. So yeah, because the sensor didn't work or something happened and there's a scratch when the thing was opening. But the Cybertruck doesn't really have crazy features just for the sake of having impressive features. No, these features are actually useful.
I remember being in Hawthorne 2019 and Cybertruck rolls on stage and you're like, no way, no way. And then Franz von Bauhausen throws the ball, it smashes, and yet here we are done, a behind schedule, but an actual product.
Yeah, and I think the big question will be, so how many do they hand over on Thursday? My understanding is that it's supposed to be roughly 10. Are they to employees, to bona fide consumers, to sort of trusted consumers and influencers? And then when we get the sales, quarterly sales and delivery figures in January, like how many Cybertrucks are on that list? So I think they've learned lessons, obviously, but they seem like they are repeating some mistakes that they made with the X in terms of just really packing this vehicle with a lot of new technology.
Yeah. Well, Elon did say that he digs his own grave better than anybody else. Tomorrow we will find out if he actually dug a grave for Tesla. But remember how difficult the Model 3 ramp was. That was insane. And yet, Tesla succeeded. And so, will Tesla succeed eventually with a pickup truck? If it's somehow not the Cybertruck, Tesla will make a regular truck. But we know from Tesla officially that the Cybertruck has over 1 million reservations, and based on unofficial sources, the estimated number is closer to over 2 million reservations. After tomorrow, we will probably have a much better idea of how many of these reservations are not going to be canceled, because maybe the specs will be impressive or maybe not that impressive. We'll find out tomorrow. A lot of it will just come down to how much is the Cybertruck and how much does it cost to make one.
Elon Musk paying an impromptu visit to Israel, where he met with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and President Isaac Herzog, following criticism for endorsing what many labeled an anti-Semitic post on the social media platform X. Musk also discussed whether Israel gets to decide if Starlink's service is available in Gaza. That trip sparked criticism and was called a PR stunt by some.
Well, I think also important was the deal he made on Starlink. He has a good bonding with Prime Minister Netanyahu, but Musk also knows the communications minister. And when Gaza's communications were shut down, there was some talk about Starlink being used there. When he talked to the Israelis, it was, you should allow it to be used, but it can be monitored. So it can be useful for Israel to know who's using Starlink and where they are. So I think he's working closely with both the U.S. government and the Israeli Defense Forces, but also doing things that will open up communications, both in Israel and then in Gaza.
Whoever accused Elon Musk of committing a stunt by visiting Israel because supposedly he was an anti-Semite and now he's hanging out with the Prime Minister of Israel, I think these people were committing stunts because it was very obvious that Elon was not an anti-Semite ever. Walter Isaacson, who wrote Elon's biography, he himself is Jewish actually, and he spent a few years with Elon. In some cases, every single day he spent some time with Elon. And he does not think that Elon is an anti-Semite. The way I see it, calling Elon an anti-Semite is just virtue signaling, and it's people pledging their loyalty to their party? Because when you say something that is obviously not true, and everyone knows about it, then your loyalty is not really questioned at all. If anything, you're signaling that, hey, look, no matter what you do, I will follow you. Or you're basically admitting that you're one of the dumbest or most ignorant people on earth. In both cases, you are actually really useful to a political organization. People that do not think for themselves, that just follow orders, are extremely valuable to political organizations. Just to be really clear, Elon obviously does have a very big problem with ADL, which is a left-leaning organization, but he does not have a problem with any particular race.
People have been on the lookout for the death watch for Elon Musk's career for so long. They've all been wrong. Just wonder if that's a situation that can continue
in my book, we start with 2008. I mean, we'll start early when he's growing up in South Africa. But the first death watch is in 2008, when Tesla runs out of money, SpaceX runs out of money. Christmas Eve, nobody will give him money, and yet he comes out of it. 10 years later, 2018, it's even worse. His tweeting is even worse. That's when he does the pedophile tweets. Everybody thought he had just flamed out.
With the Thai cave.
The pedophile Thai cave diver, the take Tesla private, funding secured. And he goes into these rabbit holes of conspiracies and these tailspins, but it's part of the whirlwind that also involves getting rockets into orbit and launching a Cybertruck tomorrow.
There's one thing that Elon is exceptionally good at, and that is solving crises. There's another thing that Elon is also pretty good at. I don't think he's all that good at it, not as good as solving crises, but he's also pretty good at it, and that is creating crises for himself. He did not have to reply to that post, but he did, and we are here now. Some advertisers chose to leave X, but I think many of them will return, and over time, as people find out that X is the best platform for discovering the truth, especially because of community notes, more and more people will gravitate towards using X.
I was thinking about it. He may be more powerful than any of these leaders he's meeting with, whether that be Netanyahu, whether that be the president of the United States. He's not somebody who has to go up for re-election again. And his reach in terms of what he's done from a defense perspective, on the space perspective, I mean, he can talk to anybody at any point, and they will welcome the audience.
Yeah, it's somewhat dangerous in a way that a mercurial person has so much power, but he's the only person who could send up almost 5,000 Starlinks and recreate the internet in outer space, because he has rockets that can get to orbit, get things to orbit, and land and be reused, something China can't do, Russia can't do, Boeing can't do, NASA can't do. Even with electric vehicle chargers, the U.S. was trying to do a charging network. Now everybody's going to the Tesla supercharger network. And once again, even with communications satellite for the U.S. military, SpaceX is the only one to get in a high Earth orbit. So you have to ask, he has so much power, and part of what I try to do in the book is not defend him having so much power, but show why he's able to make things that other people can't.
That is very true. Elon does have a lot of power. However, he's also willing to give up some of that power. For example, if you remember that controversy about Starlink and Ukraine, Elon then later decided to make sure that all of the decisions about these military-related things would go through a U.S. general instead of him. And one thing that I highly respect about Elon is that he speaks his mind. So you know what he's thinking. He's not like one of these politicians that say one thing and then the next day say the exact opposite. He's not like that. You know exactly what you're getting. We don't know, though, all of the details that we are getting tomorrow about the Cybertruck, but we will find out exactly what the pricing of it is and all of the other details, including the range and the speed of the Cybertruck. And if you found this video useful, make sure to like and subscribe right now. It's really helpful for the YouTube algorithm if everyone clicks the like button, so make sure that you do if you haven't yet, if you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching.